welcome to CHGO Red Stars, presented by PointsBet. Use promo code CHGO when you sign up to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. It's your girl, Sandra and here, joined today, as always, by my colleague, co-host, friend, and homie, Claire Watkins, a.k.a. the Scam Originator. Claire, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm good. It's been kind of a whirlwind week. So big shouts to the U.S. Women's National Team, but whoa, did that change my schedule.
Yeah, it was some news, maybe.
Some big news.
Some big news.
Yeah.
If folks haven't heard, I think that's, you know what, let's talk about it.
I think we should.
It's that historic.
It's a big deal. It's going to affect Red Stars.
Yeah, it's like, yes, you are here for the CHGO Red Stars, and so are we. But also, there are some national team players who are repping on the Red Stars. So we got to talk about this a little bit. A historic, 2 new, really, CBAs, one for the United States Women's National Team and the Men's National Team as well. Equal pay for equal play, homie.
Straight up. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's kind of wild, right? Yeah, that's big clap. Snap.
Yes,
That's right.
Love that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when it dropped early Wednesday morning that this was happening, and you know, obviously when someone announces a CBA, they hit with bullet points and they just like bang, bang, bang. And usually you're like, oh, okay, well, let's see what the whole thing says when it comes out. And then you're like, but those bullet points, you're like, oh, it's just the same. It's just literally the same.
Yeah. Like even the way it was presented, it was just like, here is what the national teams, plural, will be getting. Right. And a lot of it is just when you're called into camps. So for every single day you're in camp, no matter the result of a friendly that you participate in, equal pay. Yep. Things like benefits, things like revenue sharing, things like insurance, a little thing called insurance and benefits, and
or parental rights, right?
Huge.
Like your parental leave, right? You know, where both teams are going to get that, which is awesome.
Yeah. I was ecstatic to see it. It almost feels like, I'm not gonna lie, like, can't really front about it. There's these moments where it's like we're coming off of this, quite frankly, like what was a very traumatic and kind of horrendous 2021 where there were a lot of negative headlines around women's soccer on the club side of things specifically. And adjacent to all that was the fact that there were player unions doing the work to try to fight for what's right, you know, get fair wages for their labor that they put out there. And I just am like watching the historic CBA come through for the NWSL side of things, like just ahead of preseason, knowing that this was also in the background. It's just so wild to me that there's this like 1-2 like combo punch of like collective CBAs for both of these.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, I think it just speaks to like it takes the lows to reach the highs, right? Like none of this stuff happens. Like the NWSL CBA doesn't happen without 2021 going down the way that it went. This CBA doesn't happen without just sort of that horrible lawsuit and what we found out in early 2020 and the discovery aspects of that. And it's also just points to, I guess, like the power of transparency and information, which is like a number of things were made public over the last couple of years that ultimately led to this happening, which is, it's hard, but it's also like, oh wow, look how far we've come, you know?
Yeah. I'm looking at this moment as like a where were you when it happened moment. Right. And I think for a lot of us in the space, we were trying to work, and then we were like, oh man, more work. This is awesome.
Yeah, I woke up to it. And I mean, if people know me, they know that I write the Just Women's Sports newsletter, and it was newsletter drop morning. And so every time stuff like that happens, I'm like, why today? Why not yesterday or tomorrow? But I was really happy for them. So
yeah, I was thrilled for them as well. So celebrations in store for that, for 100%. Sure. I love that we were like, yes, let's absolutely kick off this episode with that news. But we gotta like segue into CHGO Red Stars news and updates right now. And I think maybe to start we have to maybe recap.
Yeah, talk about the game that happened last weekend.
What we chatted a little bit about last week was we previewed the CHGO Red Stars going up against San Diego Wave. And the Wave themselves were on a little bit of a run. They had a 3-game win streak to start off their regular season. And for the Red Stars, this was the first kind of really long away game that they had to test themselves with. First time that they were ever going to play an NWSL match in the state of California, let alone against San Diego Wave. And they ended up, unfortunately, walking away with no points in this one.
Yeah, you know, that's such an interesting game, I think. Not to, like, jump to the end, but we'll get into kind of what happened and why. But watching it at home on the streams, everybody knows that Torero Stadium is one of the weirder angles for the camera. You feel like, I think I said, like, it's not like you're on the moon, but it's like they're on the moon and you are watching them from Earth. And so you've got like your little telescope and you're like, you're trying to figure out what's happening. And so in the magnitude of that, I think people who had one eye on that game and maybe one eye on the other game that was happening at the same time were like, oh man, San Diego's really taking it to the Red Stars, right? Like, I think that they were like, oh wow, San Diego, waves and waves of pressure. Of course they won this game. Of course they went away with all 3 points. I contest that slightly, actually.
Yeah,
I contest that was like, I think casuals were a little bit like, whoop, San Diego really took Chicago. Yeah, and I was like, I don't know, that game was pretty competitive, but it's just, you have to look at how the teams were moving rather than, I understand why it felt that way, I guess, is maybe what I'm saying.
It just sort of felt like a bit of a, I hate to use the word, but a bit of a grind in the first half. I mean, really everything kind of opened up or leveled out, so to speak, maybe in the second half. I think you look at the numbers coming out of this game, and if you're a neutral and you're just sort of looking at that, your impression is going to be, okay, a 2-1 win for San Diego. They've got, they have the higher number in terms of the total shots. They connected more on target, but it took that team a whole half to try to unlock what Chicago was also presenting them, which I think is, very much a Red Stars thing to do. Sometimes the Red Stars I don't want to say that they're kind of like a sleeper hole type of team that they can kind of get you in a lock and kind of lull you in a full sense of security, but they definitely they cause some issues there for San Diego early.
They can if they have to, I think, is the biggest thing. Like, they talked about after the game, and I think we all were talking about before the game, the availability report, which we've gone from being a weather podcast to like an availability podcast. I've gotten to the point with calls with head coach Chris Petroselli where I'm like, I have to remind him what players are still out. Like, he'll do a list and I'll be like, no, there's 3 more. Can you actually tell me about those 3?
That's the update.
But yeah, so it was a really, really young squad that they put out there. They had a couple players carrying little knocks that were playing. Alyssa Nair was carrying something. Petroselli said this week that she could barely move before the game started.
That was kind of disturbing to hear.
But I know, but she still wanted to play. Danny Colaprico and Aaron Wright were both on the bench. Vanessa DiBernardo played with a little bit of a knock. And then you had Ava Cook play a full 90, and you had a number of other true and Amanda Kowalski, and then you had a number of true rookies sub in. So it became it was a curious case of mentality, I think, because from the outside it's hard to tell how a team is going into something like this. Like, are they thinking, oh my God, we're playing Alex Morgan and we don't have any of our, we don't have a number of top line players? Or are they thinking nobody expects us to go in and compete, so we're going to go in and compete? And I think in the first half we saw the latter, which I think was really positive. However, when we get into the feels like of the game, right? The feels like issue was Chicago just could not hold on to the ball. And it's actually, I mean, it's kind of interesting that they even had about the same possession numbers, because Chicago was really struggling in the midfield specifically or on the wings to retain possession of the ball. And so playing the Wave, they pretty much immediately come in with waves of pressure after you turn the ball over. That's their bread and butter right now. And so it always felt like it would be Chicago gets out of the trap, and then they immediately turn the ball over. And then they get out of the trap, and then they immediately turn the ball over. It was just this cycle.
You could definitely see these moments and these long stretches of kind of some disjointed play.
Yeah.
The passes, unfortunately, just weren't connecting. And I think for me, like watching it happen in real time, like I had wondered this, and we had talked about it because we've turned into the injury report podcast now.
Right. Yeah.
But that was one of the things that kind of was lingering in the back of my mind, where it's like, okay, we've had a number of games that we've seen this Red Stars team in this new formation that they're rolling out with tactically this year, and was this essentially going to be the game where we realize that is it the unfortunate truth that maybe the personnel available right now isn't matching up to what they're trying to present stylistically on the pitch. And I think in this game, I saw that kind of come to fruition. We just saw, I think for me, a little bit of disjointedness too much.
Well, after the game, they said that they considered abandoning the formation entirely.
Yeah.
And then they were like, wait, we don't have the right players for that either.
Yeah.
So they kind of were stuck. They didn't have the right players to put together a traditional 4-back. And then they didn't really have the right players to not concede those kinds of turnovers and concede that kind of pressure on the other end. So they knew, I think they were very aware of their limitations going into the match. However, and this is where like I'm picking up maybe the energy from the team that I got after the game, which was at halftime, they were like, no, we can win this.
Yeah.
At halftime, there was, and so it's a little bit of like a self-fulfilled prophecy where people are like, oh yeah, San Diego is taking it to the Red Stars, but the Red Stars felt in the locker room at halftime.
They're like, no, man, LFG.
Yeah, they're like, no, like, what are you talking about? It's 0-0. We got 45 minutes to go win this. We maybe our young players were a little bit scared at the beginning of the game, but now 45 minutes in, they're like, wait, we can handle this. And then, but obviously what did end up happening was quick transition, Sophia Jakobsen in space, and Kayla Sharples. I mean, you should honestly like never blame the defender.
I mean,
pretty
it's
much.
Sophia Jakobsen, man.
Yeah, and it's also like with that particular situation, I'd have to go back and watch the highlight. I was like, where are the other defenders here? I don't actually know if this was a tackle that needed to be made, but because it wasn't a red card, right? So I don't know what the other people on the line were doing, but Money Morgan at the penalty spot,
Money
right?
Morgan at the penalty spot, 100%. It's just like at this point during this week 3 matchup between the two of them, it was like San Diego's been averaging up to that point like a penalty kick per game, so it was just kind of one of these things where it's like, okay, well, that almost feels normal at this rate for San Diego away. But I think the timing of when the goal came, just like approaching this hour mark, it's one of those things where it's like they had the scoreless first half. Clearly San Diego was kind of struggling with how to kind of break things down there, despite maybe some disjointedness from the Red Stars. And then you have this second half where it's like the Red Stars were like, we're doing all right. We're fine.
Yeah,
like, we're okay here.
Yeah.
Let's go out there and get a result. And then you've got this unfortunate moment with like a PK. And then, like you said, Money Morgan. It's just like one of these things where maybe kind of set some other things into play when you go down a goal with still that much time left to go in the second half. Yeah. Because the other question that triggered in my mind was like, okay, well, who is going to equalize for the Chicago Red Stars?
Right. Well, and that's where the problems of advancing the ball become an issue. Yeah. If you cannot successfully advance the ball, then you're going to have a lot of trouble getting in front of the other. I mean, not to explain soccer to people, but if you can't get the ball in front of the goal, it's hard to kick it into the goal.
What is the final third for 500?
Right, exactly. So, I think that there was that period of time in between the first San Diego goal and the second San Diego goal. You almost felt you're like, this has 1-0 written all over it, right? And then, I mean, to be honest, that second San Diego goal was it was a blown assignment. I don't know. It was like the second ball off a free kick. It was a well-constructed free kick in that they did that on purpose, which is that they didn't just do the long ball in, right? They went short, and then they tried to get things, and it worked. It totally worked. Chicago got drawn towards the ball. Kaylee Reel had a free as a bird header. She was just alone in space on the moon, which is where they were playing the game.
And this is like, now we're approaching like just like the final waning minutes. And I think maybe at this point, let's say, for example, let's just say here, how's this for a transition? Let's just say at this moment you're watching something in real time and you're wondering, oh, like there's still time here for the Red Stars. Maybe I want to put money down on this game and say for them to equalize. Maybe. And you know what? And if you are the betting type, the best way to also support CHGO is to download the PointsBet app and use CHGO when you sign up. If you do that right now, you get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. But that's not it. If you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you'll receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content, and you'll even get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker. That's $2,000 in free bets, a free CHGO membership, and a free t-shirt from the CHGO locker, all for making more than a $50 first-time deposit at PointsBet. Get the CHGO Red Star shirt. Just saying.
I'm not a gambler, so I don't even really know how this works, but wouldn't it be really funny if you could like bet on the Washington Spirit, but like only after they've gone down a goal?
Yeah.
Because you're like, wait, now I think they're going to win.
I would actually take that bet, quite frankly. Right. I don't think that's too bad.
That'd be a decent parlay.
Yeah.
Like Washington Spirit concede first and then win the game.
Not us giving tips on CHGO Red Stars.
Oops.
Or maybe us. Yeah. Who knows? But honestly, I think that kind of go-ahead goal from San Diego there, you get that. You can see that in the 89th minute, and it's just one of those kind of moments, Yeah. It's like you're like, well, you gave it what you gave it.
Right.
Kind of moments.
That actually did feel bad because I was like, I'm not sure that this performance deserved a 2-0 loss.
Yeah. And it didn't.
And it got
kind of wild at the end there.
Well, yeah, I mean, San Diego, I think, lost focus for a second. I think, Jill Aguilera had a goal get called offside. I don't know. I thought that was really close. Again, hard to tell because they were playing on the lunar surface. But they really hard to tell from the angle, but from my telescope. But I don't know. I thought that was close. So we thought maybe they had an equalizer even actually before the team went 2 up. And so at this point, you're like, there's some fatigue here. This is like emotionally getting a little bit tough, I think, for the team, especially because you have these rookies going toe-to-toe. They're playing full 90s. And then... yeah, Ava Cook off a nice pass from Yuki Nagasato.
Look.
And Ava Cook, I think she's been due for one. And it's not sort of surprising to me that the first goal came from something of like a breakdown at the end of a match. But that's the kind of thing that you build on for the next game to say like, okay, I was able to do this through... first of all, like still having the legs to do something like that at the end of a game after starting. And then just, we know that the tenacity is there, right? Yeah. Lots of players on this team that are full of that kind of defensive or attacking tenacity. But then it's like, okay, how do we hone that into something cohesive?
Yeah. It's the soccer gods can be cruel. And they said, no, only one rookie may have a goal in this game. And it got credited to Ava Cook and in the 90th minute there. But I'm with you. I thought, bringing in Jill Aguilera kind of in that final 15, as you at this point in the game are still trying to chase a 1-0 game. You came in maybe around the 75th minute or so.
Yeah.
But, I'm enjoying that for now. I'm someone who's I'm on the Jill Aguilera hive, right now. And she's a player that I would like to see get a little bit more time with the Red Stars, especially if this early in the season, like that was someone that we were chatting a little bit about last week when we were like, well, formations have been a lot of fun to watch.
Right.
We're enjoying looking at the things the Red Stars are presenting tactically this year. But a concern that has been lingering in the back of our mind is kind of a lot of the ground that this middle third players have to sort of cover right now. And if it's not in the cards to sort of expand the depth there, that if we're looking at the available personnel right now, like who are we filtering in that we maybe wanted to see somebody like Jill Aguilar be utilized a little bit more in these situations. So she's kind of coming in as like this kind of late second half kind of player. I'm enjoying what I've been seeing so far.
Well, same. And I mean, specifically also, I think what we saw in that game was what happens when you push her closer to goal.
Yeah.
They've been asking her to play more in preseason. In preseason, they were asking her to play more holding. And she can do it. She's getting used to that. I think that's a mind F, if I'll, to say the Kids Bop version.
It's tough.
To go from being someone who's used to advancing and you have to become a holding player. Yeah. So exactly, they were chasing a goal, right, when she came in this game. And so she started chasing a goal. And I think that that's what was really exciting to me, is that, like, okay, you give her that specific assignment to get an equalizer and she's going to make something happen. And I think that that's exactly what you want in a young player. And then, yeah, I mean, game ends 2-1. It's just like, what can you say? They made Vanessa DiBernardo play the 6.
Yeah.
Again.
If you've been here a little while, you understand how maybe funny that is.
Yeah, it's just like,
that's not something that that's
you
not
like
a
you
role
like
that
look at the
Vanessa
Opta
DiBernardo
lineup
plays.
and you're just like, well, that went the way it was gonna go, you know.
Yeah.
But no, I think it was competitive, and I just like put a stamp on it. Chicago has been competitive in every single game they've played this year.
Yeah.
And I think that is really important at this stage of the season.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I just think if you're a neutral that kind of took a look or a quick gander at this game, because again, there were two that kind of, they had the same kickoff time.
Yeah, right.
And if you were just taking a quick gander at this game and you sort of just caught the end of it where you were looking at the numbers and you see a 2-1 scoreline, you're like, that's not an ass whooping by any means.
Right.
And, you know, I just am kind of like, well, I think because we're still in these we're not even at like the first quarter of the season being completed, and you have a Red Stars team that is staying competitive, apparently, no matter who they're putting out on the pitch, which I think is very important at this time. Like,
exactly. Yeah, that's right. Logan said no 5-0. That's right. Exactly.
That's right, Logan. We see you, buddy.
We see you. That's exactly right. I think we're at a 0 goal differential right now, so like doing great. It's not negative 5.
Yeah. I think I would be concerned if they got a start off to the 2020 season like they did last year. That would have sucked indeed. But it also would have not felt unfamiliar.
It's so
true. Which I guess is a silver lining. IDK.
I don't know. I mean, I think that's just basically what you have to take from it, is that the team was not able to play the way they ultimately want to play. The bigger question is, will they ever get to that point through no fault of their own, but just like who they have? Because maybe this is a good seg.
Let's do it.
To this week. And actually, I was thinking about this today or yesterday, which is that I actually really love that we record this on Fridays, because Chicago has gotten into a schedule of doing their pregame conference calls on Thursdays. So rather than us being like, we have no idea what they're going to look like this weekend, we actually have some updates.
Heyo. So
which is exciting.
Fast forwarding ahead, the Red Stars are still going to be on the road.
Yes.
They will compete.
They did. I mean, they did obviously come back. But
yes, they're training and everything like that. But they will hit the road once more for their Week 4 fixture, and they will face Orlando Pride. First time that they're going to face Orlando this year. So that's exciting. But they did a little bit of pre-match availability. And it was dope because there were 2 players with Chris Petroselli. And it was 2 players that we were chatting a little bit about last week.
Well, they've been the big topic of conversation just with so many players out. You know, if Chicago had like their entire roster available, maybe this would be more like, great, we'll work them in slowly. But like with so many people that they're missing, everyone is a little bit more like, when are you going to come on the field and play, please? You know, so Sarah Lubert and Chelsea Dabbur.
Yeah, we're hyped for that. So they announced the signing of Chelsea Dabbur several weeks back now already. And Sarah Lubert is a player who has just sort of always been in kind of the long-term plans for Chicago Red Stars. This is a player, quite frankly, that maybe a lot of fans who perhaps are new to the Red Stars fandom might not have a lot of familiarity with, because Sarah Lubert is a player who kind of came into the league in a very tumultuous time. It was peak pandemic era.
Right. Well,
we're talking about a Challenge Cup, and we really didn't see a ton of her until what was known as that once-in-a-lifetime fall series.
Hopefully.
Yes, hopefully, knock on wood.
Yeah.
And then, quite frankly, the 2021 season introduced Mallory Pugh to the Chicago Red Stars, and we just didn't see a lot of Sarah Lubert in 2021. In fact, midway through the season, it was announced that she was departing for Liga MX Femenil, and she signed or agreed to terms on a loan with that franchise, Club America. And now, after some time out in Mexico, she has made her return. And it was dope to see her, be able to chat a little bit about joining back up with the Red Stars.
It's very cool for us, for a player like that, she was a non-roster invitee in 2020. She clearly has something. There's a spark to the way that she plays, and that was true even then. But it seemed, she came in. She was University of Missouri, correct? Is that
Mizzou?
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
So it felt a little bit like, oh, this is a player that maybe is going to need a little bit of time to get used to the pro game. And instead of doing that on Chicago's bench, she did that going down to Mexico and playing in full games and playing in front of big crowds. And what she said, and this was a question that I asked her yesterday, is just she's really proud of the way that she has become a true professional in that time. And just figuring out the best ways to go through recovery, getting into a routine, taking the time to fix little things in her game, to go over tape. That's not like there's no, how we talk about how like it would be great if they taught like practical things in college.
Yes.
There's no like how to be a professional soccer player class in college. Yeah. And so you just have to do it by doing it. And so I think that, and that was my impression of her on the call. I was like, oh, that is a pro now. Yeah. And that's just, it's awesome to see a player.
Yeah, no, I love that
yeah.
for her. And I love that for Liga MX Femenil. Maybe I'll like, I don't know if people will like perceive this as shade, but I don't mean that as in any way. But, this is a player who linked up with an NWSL side, the Red Stars, as a non-roster invitee, but is somebody who is returning back to the NWSL and felt that she needed to leave this league in order to get into those experiences of living a life as a professional soccer player.
Yeah.
And that, I guess I think I'm fixated on that a little bit myself. This is I feel statement from Sandra, because I think that is maybe a little bit true for a number of players across this league. I think there's a ton of players in this league who you can look at and say those are starters. They see regular minutes with their franchise, and there is a ton of talent across NWSL who are players who don't see a significant amount of time on the pitch. And for somebody like Lubert, she kind of maybe fell into that category a little bit and had to literally leave the country to have these experiences, and now is coming back kind of having kind of the know-all of what that means now to sort of carry yourself in a league like this. And I liked hearing her chat about how she's also eager herself to sort of see how to implement everything that she's learned while she's out there, and trying to see how that translates here back into NWSL play.
Yeah, and I mean, the one other thing that struck me about talking to her was this, there was some speculation of like, does she want to stay down in Mexico or not? And sometimes there are a lot of different people who have a lot of different things to say about that, because they have an invested interest on either side, right? They have an invested interest in her wanting to stay in Mexico, an invested interest in her NWSL being the dream. And from her, getting a chance to speak to her for the first time, it was pretty simple. Yeah. She said, I was always coming back. Yeah. It was always just a matter of when.
Timeline, yeah.
And she was really happy to extend her stay with Club America, but the goal was always to come back better. And so it was, and I have no commentary on that, but it was just nice to hear from the player, I guess, maybe is where I was at with that.
Yeah. I mean, transparency is a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah.
And having like that knowledge of stuff is very important too, to sort of get the perspectives and how they fall in line with things here.
Yeah, and Courtney's right. So one of the idiosyncrasies of this loan is that they weren't really expecting her back so soon. Yeah. They thought maybe they'd be going deeper into the tournament that they do down in Mexico, and so she's not available until June 1st. So we got like a reintroductory press conference with Sarah Lubert. She will not be there. She can train. Yeah. She can train. She's allowed to train. She'll
with
be
the team.
She's
just unavailable for selection until June 1st.
Exactly.
Just per policies.
Oh, and speaking of transparency, no one knew to ask that question, and Chris Petroselli offered that up, and so I thought that was a dope. Change of pace.
He was straight up like, "Here's the thing that we should add.
Yes,
she will not be available to play."
Right,
which is dope, because I think it's cool to have a head coach who is like,
here's what's going on,
who's able to read the temperature of people's interest, and is like, yes, everyone is very excited that Sarah Lubert has returned, including us.
And also, don't yell at me when she doesn't play this weekend.
I respect
he's like, don't flame me. I
respect it so much.
Exactly.
That was great to see from the Red Stars head coach there, but also cool to hear a little bit from Chelsea Dabbur as well.
Yeah, very briefly. That was kind of a funny situation. Yeah. She was a little bit late. She had car trouble, and that felt like a very, very introductory press conference in that. She's still really new to the team. She's a young player. I asked, just kind of a fun question. I was like, is there a thing that you're excited, excited to do in the States? And she's just like, everything. I've never been here before.
Never been to America.
I asked her how familiar she was with the team. She was like, a little. But the cool thing, and I think everybody, not to stereotype the Australian players, but there's an element of joy they take from the game that is really noticeable even just talking to them. And I asked her kind of like, what if fans don't know you as well, what are you hoping to bring to the team? And first of all, she said goals. She wants to score goals. And then she said, but I also just want to bring a sense of joy because I really love playing soccer, and I thought that was great too. Yeah. We'll get to the injury report.
Yeah, briefly. We do questions to the later stage of the episode, so hang on to that.
Yeah, we see
will.
You,
Courtney. We appreciate you. Yeah. A fun question. I think maybe once Chelsea has more of her footing and getting more familiar with the city, because this is something that I think we usually ask of all the soccer players, but in particular the Matildas, the Aussies who come stateside, because they're real big coffee heads.
Oh, that's right, they are.
Yeah.
Well, everybody knows that the NWSL players just themselves in general are big coffee heads. It's like coffee, beach, soccer. Fashion.
Yes.
Coffee, beach, soccer, fashion.
All in that order, I think.
And so, therefore, perhaps you would be interested in
let them know.
Strava coffee. Strava CBD coffee is a game changer. I'm so excited to say tinctures later. It has helped thousands of people to improve their overall wellness and quality of life. Strava delivers delicious, fresh roasted specialty coffee infused with organic broad spectrum CBD. CBD from hemp doesn't make you high or hungry, but it does offer real benefits that can help you feel alert and focused without the jitters, live your day more balanced with less anxiety, fewer aches and pains. Plus, including CBD in your daily routine can even help you enjoy more restful sleep so that you wake up feeling your best. Chelsea Dabbur flew across the country. Maybe that would be helpful. The best part, Strava is all about quality. Everything is a small batch, fresh and shipped straight to your door. Strava also offers concentrated full-spectrum CBD, say it with me, tinctures, for those looking for a more traditional CBD format with a powerful entourage effect of benefits. CHGO listeners can save 25% off their entire purchase when you use the code CHGO25. That's 25% off your entire order at StravaCraftCoffee.com when you use the code CHGO25 at checkout. Discount coupon valid on non-subscription purchases only. One use per customer. Already love Strava? Subscribe and save with the Strava Coffee Club. With Strava, you're in control. Save on your favorite coffees and have them automatically delivered to your home or office on your preferred schedule.
I will say this.
Yes.
I am someone who doesn't consider herself like a coffee drinker, but I am someone who's absolutely used CBD before. So I'm a little curious as to what...
I know, I do. I've done this ad read, I think, like 3 times now, and every time I'm like,
I'm maybe. Like, this is a new plea. Maybe. We're breaking the fourth wall here.
Yeah.
CHGO, let us get some Strava coffee.
Yeah, let us try the product.
And we can actually be like, hey, this is
personal recommendation. Yeah.
But a little different from what we heard in that press conference with Lubert versus Dabbur is, are we going to see Dabbur this weekend? And if we see her, what's that going to look like?
Yeah. I would not I would not expect a full 90, I don't think. The energy I've gotten from the team is that it's the early part of a long season. Yeah. And like I said, they've been competitive in every game. So I think that I think there's something, you want to be really careful when you've asked a lot of young players to go out there and do battle for you, not to just be like, well, Dabbur can go 60, so you're going to be on the bench, even though you've been doing well, or what, you want to integrate those players in, but you also want to maintain that team feel. And so I think you want to be really conscious about that as well. So yeah, Dabbur should be available. I think she's going to travel with the team. Shall we get into go down the list? Good news, bad news. Do we want to do good news and bad news,
Yeah, no,
side by side, or do we want to like go good to bad, bad to good? What do we think? Bad news first.
The people want to know. Shout out to Courtney wanting to ask know, us about what we've heard about Mallory Pugh, but again, got that update today, as a matter of fact. So when we're looking ahead to the Red Stars facing off against Orlando Pride, at this point, unfortunately, it shouldn't maybe feel that unfamiliar, but Morgan Gautrat actually has been confirmed that it's going to be projected somewhere 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Going to be without her presence.
So specifically, Petroselli said that they had a meeting.
Yes.
They had a meeting. It was one of those things where it was like, we need to have a more formal conversation about the length of this injury time rather than it just being like week to week to week. Because that psychologically is not good for a player either. You need to give them a timeline and be like, focus, here's what you're focusing on, and here's the amount of time you're going to be focusing on it. And so
here's your job. Your job is to get better.
Is to get better, exactly. and so they put a formal 4 to 6 weeks on it, which is, I'm sure, so frustrating. Can I just say, though, it's also relatable because I also have had a calf issue that has been lingering for some time. And I'm just like, it's hard to get this fixed.
And you're not a pro soccer player.
I'm not even a pro soccer player.
And it's tough. But I, again, another thing that I appreciated coming out of the match day availability, what was that? I think that was smart, ultimately, to sort of have that conversation, with this player and kind of put that, like you said, put that timeline on it. It's tough to maybe, be on the receiving end of that news or even hear it if you're someone who's a fan of the team, because we know what type of year Morgan Gautrat was coming off of last year. I think, for those of us who already knew the type of caliber player she was, I think for many neutrals of the league and of the sport, perhaps maybe got reintroduced to Morgan Gautrat, and we're like, wow, like Morgan Gautrat is absolutely the World Cup caliber playing player that, she's always sort of been, portrayed as. And I think maybe being on a team like the Red Stars that has historically always had a very good midfield, perhaps maybe gets a little lost in that. But in something like 2021 season, where it just sort of felt like obstacle after obstacle after obstacle in front of this team, Morgan Gautrat absolutely was lights out for the Red Stars. So, if you're looking at it, the transition from last year to this year, of course, that's a tough loss. But I think maybe the silver lining within it is, if we're talking about a 4 to 6 week period, the hope, I think, is maybe to get this player back, maybe post CONCACAF W Championship for this team.
The reason you do this is you see this in basketball a lot, which is, it's like, when do you shut a player down, right? And the issue with that is it's always a negotiation, because you never have a player that wants to be shut down, right? And so, especially with lingering injuries, they have good days, they have bad days, they want to play. And then at some point you're like, we need to actually just move over and fully focus on this being a long-term thing, just so you're 100% healthy when you come back. So that's the bad news. That's the one piece of bad news. And we keep talking about them needing like maybe one more piece in the midfield, and not having Gautrat is not going to help with that. But we got a lot of other good news, though. Mallory Pugh, Petroselli was very, very adamant to say that she's been working out. She's been doing fitness. She's been doing lifting. She's not kind of been, he said, like, she hasn't been sitting in a dark room for the last 3 weeks.
I love that he put it that
way. But it's contact. You have to be really careful reintroducing contact when someone has a concussion. But the expectation was full training today and some availability this weekend, hopefully. And then all the questionable players, I think he said we're feeling better. So Colaprico, Wright, DiBernardo, Nair, we're all feeling better. So it should be Ella Stevens, he said also we might see a little bit of, or she might be available. So better news. Yeah. But it's still, it's just still an incomplete picture.
Yeah, and honestly, I think if the general idea is, was to introduce some contact and then maybe have this player still be listed as questionable, and then kind of like a game time decision with like a deep minute restriction.
Right.
I'm like in 100% support of that. I think that makes total sense, quite frankly. It's just logical at this point. I don't know. I mean, it's just way too early to just play with that type of stuff. Not a brain injury, you know?
Right,
like,
and also this is just the reality of the schedule, which is just like they're going to have a really intense couple of weeks in June, and then there's going to be like international break. So it's like they're going to have other games than this one, I guess, to try to get everybody back up to speed. However, maybe before we go, they did trade for a 2022 international spot yesterday.
Yeah.
Which was fun to just be like,
yeah.
They're getting Katoto, you know.
Yeah, yes. Only in my wildest dreams. Yeah. If the Chicago Red Stars ever got Marie Antoinette Kanoto, I would like absolutely just fall out of this chair.
Yeah,
like,
I'd have no words.
I would literally be speechless. It would just be a 45-minute show of just me staring
kind of
at
like
the camera.
thinking about it.
Just looking and staring at the camera.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw them. They engaged in a trade with Gotham. They got a international slot for this year, and in exchange, sent an international slot for next year to Gotham, and some allocation money as well. And of course, everyone's having some fun with that for now, and us as well.
Yeah, I mean,
is that your wildest dream one? Is Katoto?
Is Katoto? There are a lot of good players out there, to be honest. I know, though. I think the answer is actually no. I mean, I think that the wildest dream would not actually be a striker. It would be like a midfielder, like a really good midfielder.
I just think people don't realize how much a midfielder is going to help this team right now. Yeah. And I think you and I are both in the same headspace where we're like, actually, what if not a striker?
Right, exactly.
But a midfielder. Again, because I just feel like it's super early in the season, and they are going to introduce, Dabbur into the team.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna be Alexia Putellas.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. Duh. Like it's gonna be the
No, it's gonna be Lucy Bronze, but she plays in the midfield.
Oh. No. Let's see what happens there.
That honestly, the sad thing about that is that feels more likely to be somehow.
Lord help! Sorry, guys, help me.
I know. I've said it now. Yeah.
I look. Are they going to get the bounce back against Orlando Pride? Let's talk about that.
I think they can. Yeah.
A little bit. Orlando Pride, man, in a bit of a rebuild year themselves. Currently on a 3-game undefeated streak. They've got themselves a couple wins, a draw, and they have reintroduced Sydney LaRue into their lineup. A striker of their own.
Yeah, they were missing her a lot in the Challenge Cup.
Injury. And they absolutely were missing her. And now that she has made a return, 100% see who this player is and what she means to a team like that. So, they've got LaRue in the front line. Erin McLeod came back after her knee scope and is looking good.
She does look good.
In net for them. So, they... not to say that Orlando's getting high on their own supply by any means, but they are definitely they have officially put together a string of games.
They're also a bit of a...
They
like to tussle. They like,
rough and tumble.
Bit of a pow-pow sort of a team. So.
Is this a game that's going to come down to the duels?
Oh my God! Is it a game that's going to come down to the refs? More like, which I don't know. Hopefully not. They're a physical team. That's part of their DNA now, which is good for them and bad for the team that they're playing.
Simple.
Yeah.
Boom.
But it's getting them results. And I will see. I think Chicago can go toe to toe with Orlando. Chicago has historically had some really great games against them. They've historically had some really weird games against them. They don't always do well going down into the high humidity, but we've had a little bit of that so far up here. So hopefully they've gotten used to it. But yeah, I totally think they can bounce back. Yes, I do think that.
I do. I'll just put it. I don't know if this is going to happen. I'm not in the coaching staff and, not privy to who they're going to have in the lineup. But for me, I look at this game and I want to see all the youngins. I want to see
get them back out there.
Minutes.
Yeah.
I want to see, I want to see Jill Aguilera, Sam Fisher getting in the mix of these things. I want to continue to see Sarah Griffith. I want to see these young players get minutes again. If there's a team that I'm looking at this year that I want several new faces on the Chicago Red Stars to get extended minutes in, I want it to be against Orlando Pride.
Yeah, and I think things we need to see. We need to see BSG continue to develop. It'll be really good to get Erin Wright back in the lineup. Just because I think that her understanding of the new system is actually quite high because she's been playing like that her whole career anyway. So having her back in, I think, adds a level of confidence in that attacking transition. And then I agree. I think that you trust the young ones. You get Danny Colaprico and Zoe Morse back in that defensive midfield. Don't make Vanessa DiBernardo do that anymore. Yeah. And then I think that they'll be defensively sound. And then the question is just who's going to score the goals. Yeah. And they have more options there, so that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited for this week for sure. I think more than I was for them to go to California. Yeah. So we'll see what comes out of this one. We answered a couple questions already in the chat. Courtney asking about the update on Mallory Pugh. We went through that a little bit. Let's maybe take a scroll through and see if there...
No word on Kaylia Watt.
Nope.
She, I'm sure everybody knows she's not much of a social media person.
Yeah. All we know is that the injury that was sustained was an ACL, and that can just depend on the player.
When she is back in market, I think we will know, and I think that's the beginning of the next step. When did she tear her ACL? Was that in November?
That was in the semifinal of 2021. So that was
the end of October. It's now... the end of May. I mean, generally. I mean, the thing is that she's probably got just as many capabilities where she is than the Red Stars even do. So it will make sense to bring her back into market probably when she's pretty far along, is what I would guess.
Yeah. Logan, unfortunately, I'm not super familiar.
We'll find out
with Dabbur's defensive capability, but you know what? We're going to find out real soon. Yep. The unfortunate truth of the matter is that I struggle to watch A-League games, and I think that is a common thread for a lot of people who try to watch
well, that's just so different too. You don't necessarily have to defend as much from the front line if you're down in Australia.
Yeah, but we're gonna find out real soon. John with a question about attendance. Looks like he says we've seen attendance records for women's soccer worldwide, while Chicago Red Stars is still struggling to get people in the stands. Is this due to stadium location, or is the front office failing short to blame? It's tough. I mean, it's a wonderful time for women's soccer attendance that we've been seeing, but we've also been seeing some of these record-breaking game attendances for very specific historic games. So I'll also just try to maybe make that connection as well. I am not going to be someone who comes on this podcast and goes like this and says the people in the front office are terrible, because that's just not something that I believe. I believe that people who find themselves employed within the NWSL are mostly good people and trying their very best. And stadium location, I mean, listen, it's Bridgeview. It's just one of these things that I think that we've always talked about when it comes to women's professional soccer in the Chicagoland area. The truth of the matter is there's just not a ton of options for women's professional domestic soccer to be, played in professionals facilities in Chicagoland. I think you have the Fire and Soldier Field right now, but before then they were also in Bridgeview. And I think with this current era of NWSL, there's just no going back to what used to be, playing in college facilities or, accepting a college facility with, a 5,000, capacity. I think that something that we can maybe circle and take a look at is, say, it's year 10 of the NWSL. And by extension, that means it's also year 10 for the Chicago Red Stars in NWSL. And a thing that I don't think is unfair to say about things like attendance for the Red Stars is that whatever you thought was working in the last 10 years clearly isn't anymore. So, let's try to maybe think of some new and fun, innovative ways to incorporate or engage fan interest and fan attendance, because sometimes if it ain't broke, don't fix it doesn't necessarily work. But we'll see what happens. I mean, also, I think there's been some real struggles with the weather for the Red Stars out in Bridgeview, and it has not been very fan friendly or even player friendly. It's been cold, it's been rainy, it's been et cetera. But, the attendance thing is something that unfortunately always gets tossed around and asked around no matter really what club, in NWSL. And it's just one of those things that I think people are always going to want to try to fixate on a little bit when I don't think it necessarily needs to be super fixated on. And then I just always sort of think that it's like you're kind of comparing apples and oranges a little bit. 90,000 for a match between Barcelona and Real Madrid, two like historic, iconic brands for like centuries, is a completely different thing when you're comparing that to the women's game in the United States, where both the professional league in NWSL and also the sport of soccer are still a thing that are gaining traction here. So obviously something that we'll always try to keep an eye on, but sort of my take, 2 cents on it.
The only people who know the answer to that question are the people who work in the front office, I think, is the other thing.
Yeah. All we can do is just continue to just like speculate through our 2 cents and whatever was working or you thought was working was not. And I guess we just have to continue to see if you just keep beating the same drum, or maybe you try to look at a newer, better, different, shinier drum with better resources and tools. We'll see. But I hope the Red Stars win this weekend and we get to come back and talk about a dub. I would love to see it. I would love to see another rookie goal, maybe a different rookie get on the scoreboard. Love to see it. If you have
Jill Aguilera rising.
Yes, if you have loved what you've heard us chat about here on CHGO Red Stars, listen, there's a number of reasons for ways for you to go ahead and support us in the work, and a huge way to do that is becoming a CHGO member. You get access to podcasts and live shows every week. That's something that's always going to be around for you, but we're talking about maybe doing some post-game shows eventually. You're going to get access to premium written content for all members at allchgo.com. So if you are a big fan of Claire's writing, like I'm a big fan of Claire's writing, you're going to want to sign up for a CHGO member. You get dope merch for all the teams. You get a free shirt when you become a member. And of course, you get access to our members only Discord at the CHGO Lounge, which is fun. Yeah. Maybe you'll see us kind of lurking, and maybe you'll see us kind of participate.
Once I can figure out how to get in there, that's a me problem.
Technology is hard.
But yeah, no, every Tuesday, you're getting a weekly column from me about the Red Stars, and hopefully it'll be about a dub.
Go Red Stars. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Appreciate y'all.